How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we're back at it, breaking down the latest in Mets land. And in our Big Mets update segment, we have played a deep dive right here, right now. Exciting topics on Carlos Beltran, a former New York Met, now turned a special assistant to David Stearns in the front office, and now a major role with Team Puerto Rico. We're going to highlight the upside it has, not only for his future going forward and his career in the front office, but ultimately its impact it may have now on his tenure with the Mets going forward. From there, we're going to get into Roki Sasaki, the coveted pitcher coming over from the MPB. Where do the Mets currently stand in his market, courtesy of Ken Rosenthal, the Athletic? We'll highlight from earlier today. Then some other tidbits on the Mets and their potential bullpen targets this offseason. We touched on one yesterday. We're going to touch on that player and then some again today, as a day later, after talking about the potential of this player landing with the Mets, we find out from Mike Puma there, the New York Post, that he may in fact be one of the more realistic fits for this Mets bullpen that I'm very excited to touch on. A little bit on the Dodgers and the latest moves that they're making, on how this impacts rival clubs, including the Mets, this offseason, heading into the 2025 regular season, and everything else with Alex Bregman, a little bit there on a tidbit regarding him, and plenty more, folks. So thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe on as your first chime in. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys again for 30K subscribers, and make sure you're chiming in to our January 7th live stream in the evening, where I'll be giving away a Juan Soto jersey to one lucky subscriber that subscribed to the platform, as a further thank you again for 30K subscribers. And shout out to BetUS, which has you covered for all your sports betting needs, folks. So let me see your initial reactions down below. Get into, but let's start here with Mr. Carlos Beltran, because Carlos Beltran is now Team Puerto Rico's GM for 2026 World Baseball Classic. This is very exciting news. First and foremost, congratulations, Carlos. This is beyond deserving. Beltran, who was initially hired as Mets GM a number of years ago, lasted a second, and the cheating scandal with the Astros came out. He was away from baseball, came back, was in the Yankees org, was even a part of the Yes Network. Then he comes to the Mets, initially as part of the Billy Upper regime as a special assistant to the GM. Now he's a special assistant to the president of baseball operations, David Stearns, and he had a more hands-on feel with the Mets than any previous year outside of being a player here, obviously. Beltran traveled with the Mets throughout the entire course of the season last year and had a more hands-on experience, as I mentioned, than his first year under his tenure with Billy Epler. Now being a full-time GM there, which I absolutely love, and we see further here, shout out to Michael Mayer, who further reported on who will be part of Beltran's team there. Carlos Delgado, Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, Roberto Alomar, and Edgar Martinez will be part of the baseball operations along with him there for GM for Team Puerto Rico. We saw Nelson Cruz officially be named the GM there, I believe, for Team Dominican Republic, so that's very exciting as well. But simply put, I love this for Beltran, because we all know that he's been trying to get his foot in the door to have a serious role with a Major League Baseball team, and he's been doing that with the Mets, especially with the hands-on feel and connection he's had with them over the past year and a half. Now, by having him in this GM role now for Team Puerto Rico, with Francisco Lindor being the captain for that team in 2026, inevitably barring changes, obviously, you know that Beltran is going to get a first-hand experience that's great for him and his future there, and what he will hopefully translate to the MLB level, where he will have a serious role with a team beyond what he's currently doing with the Mets and David Stearns. I think this is great for the Mets as well. Further experience, along with potentially Beltran may in fact find himself sliding in as the next actual GM for the Mets, where David Stearns reaches a point and says, you know what, we could give you the GM label. We love what you're doing here, Carlos, and we're absolutely invested into seeing what you have to say in your input and how much of an impact that you could have in our day-to-day operations, as long as it is deemed fit with what I certainly like. So David Stearns, he certainly has loved what he saw from Carlos Beltran, the same guy that he looked up to during his time growing up as a Mets fan, mind you. Watch those Mets runs in the early 2000s with Beltran, and even though they fell short in 06, it wasn't for a lack of effort, and Carlos certainly made his staple and made his positive impression on Mets fans for many years, as he has done since then, now in this front office role for the Mets, now here with Team Puerto Rico. Congratulations once again to him. That is fantastic news. And also shout out to Joseph for being the first to break this news on Carlos Beltran today. He actually interviewed Carlos Beltran a month and a half ago at a charity event, and I helped to really get his report to blow up, as I made a video on it, as Beltran was quoted talking about the Mets' pursuit of Juan Soto and how confident he felt in Steve Cohen, how the Mets had such a great chance to make it happen. He felt like it would happen. That held true, and hopefully the first of many stars from either Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, different types of, Spanish descent landing in Queens is what we love to see, because they bring not only vibes, they not only bring great aura, but they just bring tremendous talents that, again, are so hard to find. They're so hard to replace in today's game. They're just in a class of their own that I love so much about them. And separately, other players that are in a class of their own, especially when you look at the skill set, when you look at how meticulous they are, how disciplined they are, is what I think of when I think of Japanese players right away. So a perfect segue as we can get into now the latest on Mr. Roki Sasaki. So let's do exactly that, everybody.
Topic that I think will dominate the next few weeks, and that is where will Roki Sasaki go? So I wanted to get your thoughts on an update, which I know you mentioned a little bit on yesterday, but also can you mix in your thoughts on the process? How do you think the process has played out so far with the way he's eliminated some teams, met with some teams, and also has his agent Joel Wolf pretty in the public scene about his situation?
First off, to address Joel Wolf, it seems to me that while he generally is very private, very discreet, he understands the interest in Sasaki and the need to occasionally put out some information. And it seems to me that that is what is driving this. I haven't actually asked him that, why you are going public when you don't ever go public, but it seems to me that's the motivation there. Hey, there's incredible interest in this player for good reason, and he is going to at least release what information he feels is appropriate. As far as the process itself, and I know that it's come out from Joel Wolf that there have been 20 teams that made contact. Well, there were other teams that wanted to, but were just told, hey, don't bother. You'll be wasting your time. It's not like there were 10 teams that were not interested. Every team was interested. The maximum this guy's going to get is something like $7 million. So any team can afford him. As far as where we are now, yes, there are teams that have been identified as the leaders, the ones that have met with Sasaki. And then there are teams that seemingly want to get a place at the table and have been unable to. The Red Sox and Phillies come to mind there.
So right away, before we get on to the Mets point, the biggest tidbit that I initially did not know, I was aware that the Phillies were a team that tried to get a seat at the table to meet with Sasaki, and he said no. But the Red Sox, who are notorious for their great pitching development in recent years, who have a great pitching lab there, who made major strides last season in large part because of their pitching when it had it at their best, with having guys there that we saw in Houck, and also what we saw with Cutter Crawford at times, and with other pieces in that rotation really excel throughout the course of 2024. The fact that the Red Sox didn't even get a seat at the table tells me all I need to know. This really does come down to a certain preference where Sasaki has his eyes not only on potentially big market, but isn't stubborn with big market per se, but really has an emphasis on other factors that clearly both the Phillies and the Red Sox were not meeting in the case of Roki and his pursuit.
I don't know where this is going. I don't know where he's going to end up, and anyone who tells you otherwise is kidding themselves. But it certainly seems like the teams that we've heard mentioned, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Padres, the Rangers, and some others, those are the obvious frontrunners based on.
So obvious front runners, simply put there, that being the Mets, the Yankees, Padres, Dodgers, and potentially Rangers, among others. So that's why I said the Mets are a front runner. They're not necessarily the front runner. It's hard to envision the Mets being the top dog, the favorite for Roki Sasaki. But I will leave you with this very interesting quote. This comes from courtesy of his, agent there, the same agent that Kodai Senga has, that being Joe Wolf, who represents both former MPB pitchers, now set to both at the States. Kodai, who had a Cy Young caliber year with the Mets in 2023 in his rookie campaign, and Mr. Sasaki hopefully going to do the same with the Mets here in 2025. But all jokes aside, he stated the following, and I quote, "This is an unusual process," said Wolf. "It's best if we keep it secret until the end," in regards to how Sasaki is going about this entire process and leading up to his decision. We did hear through some quotes earlier today as well throughout the industry that Sasaki is looking like that he's reaching his decision soon, and even though that will not be officially announced where he's landing until the span of January 15th to January 23rd being the posting date where it's the final day for him to sign, or else he has to go back to the MPB because that's the 40-day window, if I'm not mistaken, for him since he's been posted, and he's fully expected to make his decision. It'll be announced throughout that span, but we could find out some significant news up until that point over the next 2 weeks having to do with teams that are cut out of the Roki Sasaki mix. The first dominoes to fall out of the front runners here. And ultimately, we're to a team like the Mets who have a great young pitching lab, a very exciting pitching lab that Sasaki and Joe Wolf have been, essentially on record stating how much they admire and look up to it from the Mets. Will that be enough of an X factor for them? How much has Steve Cohen and David Stearns helped sway Sasaki at all in his decision making this offseason and their in-person hearings, where again, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Padres are some of the top teams that have had in-person meetings with Sasaki just under 2 hours. Not the case for all teams that have tried pursuing him, as it has been up to Sasaki and to the teams that he has a level of interest in. So that tells you right there, he has a level of interest in the Mets. And the best part of it all is that you really can't say that this is much of a leverage game the way that you could have argued with maybe Soto up until he signed with the Mets naturally, Yamamoto obviously, among others where it made more sense then, because Sasaki can only sign from anywhere from $7 to $10 million that a team can at most afford to offer him what the bonus pool money that they have for 2025. The most you could have is really north of 10 million, and that's after probably trading with the team to get upwards of their 60% bonus pool that they could trade. No more than 60% that you can trade with teams for said money, but you can trade in that area. So for the Mets, they're going to continue to be a front runner for Roki Sasaki, and the fact that they're still in the mix for Roki, and the fact that they actually still have a solid chance of landing him, even if it's an outsider's chance, which many believe that he will go out west to the Dodgers or Padres. I just feel very happy and grateful as a fan that they're in this mix, and if they don't land him, then they will naturally continue to pivot to sign Elian Pena, that we will further highlight on the platform as one of, if not the best international prospect not out of Japan, that is set to hit this IFA pool there beginning January 15th when he can officially sign. So Mets fans, let me know how you feel about Roki Sasaki and the latest on him. It's always greatly appreciated. And what is your optimism or pessimism level and the Mets landing someone like him this offseason? Now, going from Roki, who again, flamethrower, touches at 100, has just nasty pitches in his back pocket, has so much to give potentially for the next 10 to 15 years for a rotation, because he's only 22 to 23. Now, let's pivot from talking about the rotation and get into a bit more here on the bullpen, because we did see through Mike Puma, the New York Post came out with an article earlier today stating, can the Mets' depth of rotation talent make up for their lack of unquestioned ace? And towards the latter half of said piece there from the New York Post, and shout out to you, Mr. Puma, on the beat for the Mets there with New York Post, he goes on to state here the following, that, if the Mets are not going to be spending big for their rotation, bullpen rather. They're not going to be spending a multi-year deal for a Tanner Scott, and they're not going after Jeff Hoffman, who would like to be stretched out as a starter. So assuming those things don't happen, the Mets are going to then be involved in the short-term bullpen relief market. Makes endless sense, because that's how David Stearns operates, and there are a couple key names out there in the market that do fit the bill of what the Mets are looking for, especially as guys that can be a more surefire guaranteed setup option than Daniel Nunez, than Jose Budo, even though that they both provided great stretches of brilliance for the Mets in 2024. You have more certainties. Mike Puma highlights the following relievers that could be a fit for the Mets should they want to go short-term, potentially high AAV, which is what it'll take for the following. They're all veteran relievers, and they're all ones that make sense to a degree. You're going to have Chris Martin, who famously gave up some bombs and some runs there in the Mets that we saw in the NLCS, as he was like starting games or so for the Dodgers in their bullpen games. He also spent some time with the Red Sox where he's had success in recent years. Then we have also seen Tommy Kahnle coming back from injury, part of the Dodgers organization. Most recently, the Yankees had plenty of success this past year. He is more of a timeless guy as well. But the big one of all, and funny enough, a man that we highlighted in a video yesterday, which I think is just perfect timing, because this article also touches on how Justin Turner somewhat makes sense as a backup stopgap first base option should you not land Alonso, that we highlighted in our video yesterday too. So I don't know if Mike Puma just watched my video yesterday and said, you know what, we're going to make an article on this or what, but what I will tell you is that we are certainly thinking alike, because he has David Robertson as one of the few guys that make plenty of sense for this Mets bullpen, and I couldn't agree more. It goes without saying, folks, but David Robertson is not only one of my continued favorite relievers in the game, and there is a brilliant breakdown on D-Rob for you guys to check out that my buddy Mike, who's a diehard Mets fan from Stark Raven Sports' YouTube channel, you guys can check out that video. It came out over the past month. And a little tidbit, I will be out and part of a video with not only myself, but Giraffe Neck Mark and other amazing Mets YouTubers, and potentially a future piece there on that platform. So be on the lookout for it, everybody. Love you, Mike, and love you, Matt. You guys do great things over there at SRS. But David Robertson does great things for whatever team he's on, whether it's the Texas Rangers, the New York Mets in the first half of 2023, until my heart broke that we inevitably had to trade him him to Miami there when nothing was going right that year. I was at a drive-in movie. I almost want to say it was Top Gun Maverick or Mission, one of the like a million Mission Possibles, one of the typical Tom Cruise movies there. And that's when I found out the news and did a video there on my phone. And I missed David Robertson dearly since. The guy, even though he's basically 40 now, is a timeless, ageless wonder. He put up a ridiculous 12.4 K per nine to 3.4 walks per nine, a 3 flat year rate, and roughly 70 games last year. 72 innings pitched. The fastball still sits mid-90s. The changeup's nasty. The breaking balls simply aren't fair. David Robertson only gets better with age. He is a fine wine, a World Series champ with the Yanks. He knows what it takes to win. He has been dominating for what feels like now north of 20 years, and he isn't slowing down. He literally is insane. Look at the baseball savant numbers too. They are just absolutely absurd. It's crazy how much David Robertson has stayed afloat in his career when healthy, as balanced and as consistent as he has been as one of the top relievers in the game. He not only loved his tenure with the Mets, but he's a guy that knows exactly what it takes to win in New York, can handle high pressure situations, high leverage situations, and is the perfect setup option for Edwin Diaz. Something that we were all dying to see in 2023 never materialized because Edwin went down with injury right before the year began. Robertson in the closer role was nails for the Mets up until he was dealt, but can we finally get what we were hoping for in 2023? The bullpen collapsed before the year started. Bring back D-Rob and have him play in the role he was supposed to be in from the start 2 years ago. David Stearns, I'm begging you, if you're going to spend on any key big-name reliever this offseason, please let David Robertson be the exception. I seriously beg of you. But David Robertson, Mets bullpen targets, that is the latest on that front, everybody. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys are for or against the pursuit of the veteran and Mr. D-Rob. Now, let's go from talking about David Robertson to getting into a little bit more here, folks, before we wrap up this one. And thank you guys again. If you haven't already, smash that like and subscribe button and let us know all your thoughts in the comments down below. We did see as well, Teoscar Hernandez turned down roughly $5 to $6 million more to sign back with the Dodgers. Now, the Mets, as we know, offered a 2-year deal around the same average annual value, so it'll be interesting to see what team offered potentially the most there. There's some rumblings that the Angels may have offered the most there among other teams, but the Dodgers get their man with the deferred money, a quarter of that contract essentially. And the Dodgers also got another guy today, a guy that many of you guys probably haven't talked or thought of this offseason. But yeah, it's Hyun Soo Kim, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not. But a uber talented infield fit now for the Dodgers, signs a 3-year, $12 million deal coming from the KBO, the major baseball program and organization there in South Korea. And we see there for Hyun Soo Kim, he put up a 326, 383, 458 clip with 11 home runs and 30 stolen bags. His immediate role with the Dodgers will be their super utility. So simply saying, Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor, these guys are on the outside looking in on roles that they would have for the Dodgers next season. After extending Tommy Edman, now bringing in Kim, a guy that very well could have been a starting second baseman for the Seattle Mariners to begin the season, which is further reason as to why I hate that the Mariners couldn't get this job done. Another piece that I'm sure is going to come up with a clutch hit, a clutch web gen, and I'm sure it's going to somehow, some way win like a platinum glove in his first year with the Dodgers. Dodgers continue to add because of course they do, but it is the KBO. It is a lesser level, but I'm excited to see how these KBO guys are going to continue to battle it out. Now we got Hyun Soo Kim. We also have Ha-Sung Kim, who we're trying to find out where he's going this offseason, naturally. The great glove there from the San Diego Padres over the past couple years. You got Seiya Suzuki there with the Chicago Cubs. You also have there Jun-Hoo Lee coming off of injury with the San Francisco Giants. You got some exciting pieces, fun young pieces there from the KBO and the National League and some of the American League. Let's see what Kim provides to the Dodgers here in 2025. And last but not least, everybody, before I let you go, make sure I didn't miss on anything else. We did see a little tidbit from Mr. Walker Buehler, and let's see what exactly that was, because Walker Buehler, who again apparently he owns a horse with Alex Bregman, has made it known that he has pitched to Bregman on why he should join the Boston Red Sox. So one, I did not know that they owned a horse together, so that's new information for me today, Wardy. But secondly, we all know that Bregman feels like he very well could be a great fit for Boston, but it goes against the Dodgers, Craig Breslow, the GM of the Red Sox, and their belief of they're not shopping Tristan Casas. Because naturally, they're going to shop Tristan Casas if you're moving Rafi Devers to first, if you bring in Alex Bregman for the hot corner. Hard to envision you're going to invest $200+ million in Alex Bregman to play second base. I don't see that happen. Bregman wants it at his length the same way that Alonso does, and that's why there's a holdup with both Alonso and Bregman's markets right now. Should these things continue to hold up for a while, it could benefit the Mets, especially if things become shorter term, higher AAV with opt-outs. That's where I love things for the Mets. But if things do go long term, still keep an eye out for teams like the Blue Jays, the Tigers to a degree, obviously, right now. And yes, the Boston Red Sox to a varying degree. I'm not exactly sure how much of a Walker Buehler pitch is going to move the needle for Alex Bregman, but they have a relationship, and I thought I'd touch on that for each and every one of you. So Mets fans, thank you again so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below on all the latest big updates in Mets land. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.